Hey everybody, Chris Delano here, president of IPD, and I'm sitting next to Caiden, one of my coworkers. And in this segment, we're going to do an overview of the 4T4 Turbo and its progression over the last 20 years. A lot of people know that we sell the 4T4 Turbo and all the supporting pieces that go along with it. I would like to talk about how it began and where we're currently at. And that's why I have Caiden with me here, because he currently owns an S60R where he's gone through the motions of tuning, fabricating, doing a bunch of different things with different setups, and he's currently now running our turbo setup. I think in this video, it's going to answer a lot of common questions that we get, but again, this is going to be a quick overview of the 4T4 and its progression. So a lot of people are familiar with the flash green car that's behind me, my V70R, IPD's project car for years. People are becoming more familiar with Caiden's S60R since he's on the phones and he's talking about it. He's on Instagram and the social media is really promoting all the stuff that he's done to it and currently working on with it. But you know, Caiden, you've owned a lot of Volvo since you've worked here with me, and you worked your way up to owning an S60R, the one that I know that you really wanted. So ultimately, what is it that you wanted out of the S60R owning this Volvo?
Well, when I first got my R, I just wanted to be faster than a Subaru. I knew I didn't want a Subaru, but I wanted something to keep up with one. And I settled on this. I mean, I instantly fell in love with it. 300 horsepower and 300 foot-pounds of torque in a 6-speed manual. I mean, what more could you ask for? And I love it.
So I started working at IPD when I was 16 years old in high school and going to college and kind of progressing through the company. Obviously now I'm the president, and Caiden kind of has a similar story. And he started here when he was 16. He was working in high school. I've always had my eye on him, you know, working at a car culture organization, automotive firm, you know, there's a lot of banter, a lot of things that go back and forth, but I appreciate anybody who definitely is working really hard, owning a Volvo, trying to make ends meet and just get through life doing the things that you did. And I've always appreciated Caiden, and watching his progression has been fantastic. So my question though is, what got you into Volvos? You've always been in the car scene. What got you started with Volvos? Because you've owned many of them leading up to your S60R. Yeah. So tell us and everybody watching a little bit about how you got into Volvos.
Well, it's interesting. I never even knew about Volvo. I didn't even think about it. It wasn't even a thought in my mind. And I was handed down a Volvo and I was like, what's this? And that just kind of sparked my passion for Volvos. And IPD, you know, not knowing they were in my backyard, quite literally, you know, I saw some of the cool cars here, and the flash green car actually got me interested in these Rs. I've owned 2 now and just loving it.
So I remember when I was 16 working here, and I was heavily involved in the car scene back then. And unfortunately, we didn't have social media. You know, I'm saying, you know, I am older. We didn't have social media back then like we do to be able to connect with people, but we did have a car scene. It was mainly European driven with Volkswagen and stuff like that. But this day and age, you know, I remember being 16, trying to get the product team to listen to me and always going to them, telling them, you know, we need to do this, we need to do this. We should be looking at these types of components and wheels and all sorts of accessories. And the roles have definitely changed. Now I've got to pay attention to the younger generation that is out there and has more time to spend at these car clubs. But I'm curious as to, you know, with all the influence you've had at hanging out in the car scene in the Portland area, what made you stick with Volvo, and why did you continue to drive and own a Volvo? Because you've owned a lot of them.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think, like many of us, I love how unique Volvo is. You just don't see them out there. I mean, you see an occasional 1 or 2 on the road, but not nearly as much as a Subaru or Volkswagen, like Chris mentioned. So I think Volvos bring a certain uniqueness to their owners and to, you know, the car community that not many people even know about. You know, I go out and I have people talk to me about my car who, you know, no matter the age, they just want to know what it is. And I love telling them the story behind Volvo and what it means to me.
So we're going to roll into talking about the turbo progression, right? Aftermarket turbos. It's always been a thing on turbocharged cars. But when the R came out, it was like the perfect platform for 300, like Caiden mentioned early. You know, 300 horsepower, 300 foot-pounds of torque. It was a great platform to add more power. Well, back in 2005, IPD and myself, we bought a 2005 V70R to do a big turbo project on and see what kind of, you know, inquiries there would be out there in the aftermarket with Volvo owners. At that time, we did Aquamist, we did a GT3076 big ball bearing turbo from Garrett on the car. We worked with our 30-year partner tuning company to develop a tune for it. And we went out there and we put down, 350 wheel horsepower, almost 425 foot-pounds of torque.
Yeah.
And we promoted the livings out of it. It graced the cover of European Car Magazine, and we literally had 0 sales. And that car had everything, front mount intercooler. I mean, it was the works. It was a stage 3 car essentially back in 2005 on a new R. And
Crazy.
that car it was too new at that time. We just didn't have a lot of inquiry about spending that kind of money. And that's usually where the progression starts. So going from 2005 up to 2012, that's when I began working with a friend of mine who owns a 50-year-old turbocharging manufacturing company and really designing a turbo that would be a direct bolt-on for the car. We also looked at why the K24 hybrid and the K24, where its limitations were and what the causes were of what was going on with these cars. And at that time, it was primarily blowing up engines. The 2.5 liter was susceptible to higher cylinder pressures, higher temps. A lot of people out there in the aftermarket didn't know what they were doing regarding tuning at that time, except for our tuner who's been working on these things and developing software for these cars forever. We knew what the limitations were. And so we really wanted to develop not a turbo just to create all this power, but to be more efficient, that you could bolt onto the car, create a bunch of power while running lower boost levels. And so we did that. That's where the 4T4 came from. That's why we developed it. And we've been selling that thing since 2014 ever since. And, we're going to talk a little bit about Caiden and his journey moving forward into the stuff that he started out with his car and where he's at now.
Absolutely.
And so over time, leading from 2005 to 2012, I personally had learned a lot in the aftermarket regarding turbochargers and turbocharger setups and fabrication. A lot of people don't know that IPD used to own a Subaru department. We owned a company called Rally Tech that was locally here in Portland that is currently owned by another performance company now that we sold. But during the durations of owning the Subarus, we found out the weaknesses within the engines of those Subarus, and mainly it was like ringlands and cylinder pressure, and the inefficiencies of the factory turbochargers when you're trying to tune them and build them. I actually developed a lot of GT32s, a lot of dual ball bearing turbocharger setups and fabricated manifolds and tuning setups for Subarus. And so that kind of sparked my interest in, once we knew more about these Rs leading into 2012, we knew that the sleeves were cracking due to high heat, cylinder pressures, people really pushing the max of trying to get that K24 to do something that it's really not meant to do. The K24, by the way, just kind of falls flat on its face through the mid-range. And that triggered a light bulb for me to work with a friend of mine that owns a turbocharger manufacturing company for over 50 years to develop a ballistic high-end turbocharger that would be a direct bolt-on for these cars that nobody's ever done. Volvo does have a proprietary exhaust housing that bolts up to their manifold, and we wanted something that would bolt in. And so we worked with a dual ball bearing stainless exhaust housing, billet wheel, similar to the GTX style Garrett turbocharger, bolt-on turbocharger for these cars. We did that in 2012. We launched it in 2014. And ever since, we've been making a turbo that is able to create less boost, run more efficient, and get you more power across the rev range without pushing the cylinder temperatures to a certain extent and putting too much cylinder pressure to where it's going to crack or run too much heat in those sleeves on these cars, because the 2.5 is susceptible to certain things like that will cause them to go bad. And it's expensive when they go bad, right?
Absolutely.
You know that. You know how bad and how expensive things can be. So we'll talk a little bit about what these cars behind us have in them and where they're currently at. But right now, we're going to move into talking to Caiden about the progression of his car and how it led up to acquiring a 4T4 turbo setup. All right, and again, this is an overview video, so if anybody wants to look at individual product pages of the 4T4, there's a bunch of information on all of that on our product pages on our website. Also, you can call customer service and talk to them. You could check out the project cars. You guys can talk to me or anybody here at IPD about the V70R, but today I want to focus on the progression of Caiden's car and what he kind of went through. Being a young kid, he's worked here for many years while he was in high school. I started paying more attention to you when you were spending a lot of money and fabricating, and you would come to me once in a while. I'm not going to lie. A lot of people don't know that we've been around the block. Now, IPD has to appeal to the masses. They're not seeing us fabricate. They're not seeing all the testing and tuning that we've done. And Caiden used to come to me all the time and honestly harp about how You know, there's this fabrication scene, there's this tuning scene, and we love that. I want people to know that we really do support that. You know, I mean, I'm never one to tell Caiden that if he wants to choose a different path to get his car to achieve a certain level of power isn't our path, but I was aware of what he was going through and what he was doing, and I allowed that to happen because one, he learned from it, he grew from it, and now he's an amazing customer service agent because of it. But Caiden, let's talk a little bit about the R and the progression. You've owned a couple R's and you've transplanted everything from the R over to another R, like as you've saved up money and put parts on your car. But just go ahead and let our customers know kind of what you were trying to achieve and the initial path that you were taking. You know, I mean, touching a little bit on, I get it. You're creating friendships out there. You're doing things. You're pioneering some different stuff as far as fabrication goes. But just let's talk about being young and you taking those paths and going about that way. So,
yeah, totally. So, you know, being a high schooler or being back in high school, you know, not many of us have access to unlimited funds, you know, so to speak. And my car is my everything. It's my investment. I love it. As many of you guys probably feel the same. And so I really wanted what was best for it. And of course, I thought I knew what was best. And every time I had an issue going back to Chris, you know, he seemed to have dealt with it prior. And he knew kind of everything I was going through, which was just an eye-opener. And, you know, of course, I didn't listen to him at first. And I thought I knew what was best. So I ended up running a hybrid turbo on my S60R right here. I did, as many of you guys know, the upgraded mass airflow meter. I threw on some large injectors, you know, more so than this engine could ever handle. And, you know, I just ran into so many issues and my car wasn't drivable anymore. It wasn't I was just losing my passion for it and I didn't know what to do. So I spoke with Chris one day. I walked into his office and I just told him I gave up. I didn't know what to do. As many of you guys know, the tuning market for these is so limited and it's just so hard to find a tuner. So Chris and I did some talking and we decided that, you know, I'm going to run a 4T4 Turbo on my car. I'm going to prototype one of our new designs. Chris wanted to revamp this idea of the 4T4 Turbo because as he mentioned, you know, I'm well within the community. Many of you guys know me. And so I'm happy to be running it. Runs super reliable.
The main thing is that, again, as I was watching Caiden literally go through high school and graduate, going to college while working here and also investing in his car, the main thing is that it's not my job to sit there and put him down about his passion, right? It's never been IPD's job. That's why we don't thrash on our competitors. We don't even like to talk about it. What we focus on is what we do and what we do best here. And I saw Caiden in the car scene. I'm still involved in the car scene, people, behind the scenes maybe, but I do know what's going on locally. I'm not out there in the bunch as much, but I saw what Caiden was going through. And I saw him going through his tuning efforts and buying parts that were tough to fit, that were causing issues down the road.
For the car.
Huh?
They weren't even meant for the car.
They weren't even meant for the car. And eventually Caiden would come and talk to me about things that we would run into. And all I would do is remind him of, hey, I did this back in 2005 and 2006 and 7 and 8, 9 and 10, 11, and 12. And I would run into these same issues, you know, as either with our own car, with our product group, or with our tuning company. These are all things that we were aware of that we had already combated and fixed to make sure that we provided a reliable car that fit and worked for the masses. Now, as Caiden was working and going through all these things, I think it kind of got to a point to where, you know, you were running into, you know, just the drivability, the functionality, you're getting tired of it. And I think Caiden learned a little bit of a lesson that when you're working hard for your money, you're showing up to work every single day, you're paying for college, you're taking classes, you're doing all this stuff, and you've got this dream machine behind you that you're taking care of.
Yeah.
It gets hard when you're paying for engines, blowing things up,
tunes,
parts, cars, and time.
Chasing issues.
Yeah. And that's great. And there's a lot of people out there that have the ability to do all that. But ultimately what it came down to was, Caiden, I can get you your car to run this way, you know, and I let them drive and see the V70R, even though it's a manual or an automatic compared to a manual, it's way more fun to drive. I was like, I guarantee you could get into your car, you could start it, you could drive it, you don't have to worry about it. It's going to be a lot of fun and your dollar's going to go a lot further for you. And
Absolutely.
So that's how we kind of came to where we're at, and that's how we're moving forward. So ultimately, we designed our turbo to to help maximize the 2.5 liter that came in these cars because they were susceptible to cracking under heat and high cylinder pressure levels. So that's what the 4T4 was designed for, was to run lower boost and achieve more power all the way across the rev range. We worked with our tuner, who's based out of Sweden. They develop software for Volvo. They've been an amazing tuning company with us for 30 years. We developed a full-blown map with the correct set of injectors that are custom to us. We have all the supporting pieces, like all the silicone, intercoolers, all of those things really help just maximize your investment with the turbo and the tune that you put inside the car. So that way, it's torque request. You have a better intercooler, you're gonna run cooler, it's gonna push timing, you're gonna get, better results across, higher heat and stuff like that.
Yep.
The different variations, that really doesn't matter. The core guts of the Stage 3 kit is really your exhaust, your downpipe, the turbocharger, the injectors, and all the supporting silicone that makes that all happen. So we developed that turbocharger on the 4T4 with our tuning company and an engine performance company that was based out of Germany. So all of our road testing, all of our real world experience and testing that we did with tuning was done on the Autobahn at huge speeds, huge loads, over and over and over. And so I'm really confident in that. Now our turbo has progressed over time, just with better materials, or we've looked at CNC type things, making it a little bit less labor intensive to build them so we can try and make it a little bit more cost effective for people.
Absolutely.
But one thing that I wanted to bring up today is, now that everybody kind of understands how we got to the level that we're at with our turbocharger, and they know that our tuning background is solid. Yeah. With you, I saw you run into issues when you went to a different math. You went to really huge injectors that weren't needed. Like, we run 650 cc's on our cars now. Yeah. You were running thousands at the time, possibly for E85 and things like that. Yep. But that requires a lot of customization, a lot of tuning, a lot of know-how to make sure that your car runs right, from all aspects of starting up in the morning to warm cold starts, to hot starts going over Pikes Peak or Mount Hood. Yep. There's been situations that, I know that you ran into. So now that you came to me and we talked about going back to your factory math, to our 650cc injectors, to the 4T4 turbo that we're running on your car right now. Yeah. How have things changed, and what have you noticed as far as, or how happy are you with the current setup with what you're doing?
Yeah, that's another great question. So I still remember the days I was fighting my car to start it in the morning. I just felt helpless. There really wasn't much I could do. And it's just not this car. These cars are just built so reliably and so well. And I just felt I was doing more harm than good to it. And I didn't like that. I wanted to be able to enjoy these cars. And I feel like all you guys should be able to as well. And I just wasn't able to, with the amount of issues I was going through. I mean, shoot, even on our drive to the gorge, my car wouldn't start. We changed elevations and my car wouldn't even start at all. So, and Chris remembers that. We had to bump start my car. So that's another story to tell. But, with the 4T4 turbo on, I can say that, among all my friends out there in the community, big turbo, stock turbo, hybrid turbo, you guys can talk to me. I have been running every day this car everywhere. I go everywhere in this car. I don't even hesitate to drive 2.5 hours away to up to Seattle when needed. This car has been just so incredibly reliable for me. I honestly don't even remember the last time I had a check engine light. And keeping it up to maintenance is a huge portion of that.
Right. So I didn't want this turbo to be like don't go out there and try things yourself, right? We love that. We love talking to people that are out there trying to do things themselves on their own and, tune and all that kind of stuff. But the fact is that this is intricate software. There's a lot more to it than what's out there. There's a lot more sauce that needs to be, made and manufactured to be able to make things happen. And we've done it. I hate to say it, but we've been through all the rigmarole of trying to figure out how this works. Yep. Now, the cool thing about these cars behind us is the 2.5s. Now, a lot of people, what they're doing now is they're going for a 2.4 liter, and that's what we've done. I did that back on my car. A lot of people ask why I didn't go to Dart and Sleeves, and I'll just be honest, I didn't want to spend a $10,000 or $15,000 budget getting all the machine work done and doing that. I also wasn't looking for something where I was going to create massive amounts of power. The turbocharger that we built and the turbocharger that I'm selling, I like to be able to promote that to the customers that are part of the masses. Again, there's a small finite group of people that are going to want to go way above and beyond what we've done. And you've hung out with a lot of those people, and they've been successful.
Yep.
But it costs a lot of money to do that. There's a lot of standalones and things like that. They don't drive
their cars.
They don't drive their cars very often. They're not driving them every day. It doesn't need to be as reliable.
Yep.
Whereas that's what changed your mindset, is that you wanted something that created a lot more power, but was reliable.
Absolutely.
And that's what the 4T4 was designed for. It wasn't made to make 600 horsepower. There's plenty of people out there that are able to achieve that with bigger turbos, customization, standalones where they're wide open throttle. We built cars that are going out to the masses, to Volvo owners that can build their car up to a 4T4. All the pieces that lead up to it, they can buy individually, the boostability kits, all the silicone, the downpipe, the exhaust. You can kind of piecemeal this up and then put the icing on the cake with the 4T4 turbo injectors and a tune.
Absolutely.
So we've gone a little bit above and beyond with our cars. Caiden's car's got a 2.4 in it. I did mine first a long time ago with a 2.4. We worked with our tuner. It was a very common upgrade in Europe where you're able to create a lot more power, a little bit more boost. So we have custom tunes, or I have a custom tune on the V70R where we're running about 22 PSI as a total at the highest boost request that it will target for higher torque numbers. Caiden's car is running right now that's more catered to the masses. It's only running about 14 to 15 PSI maximum, but it's creating about 100 foot-pounds of torque across the rev range with lower boost levels than what we would run even on a tune for a factory
to the wheels.
To the wheels.
On an all-wheel drive dyno.
That's right.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool. But again, he's running less boost to make it more reliable. And there we are. So, and I know a lot of people are like, okay, 300 wheel horsepower. Well, these cars on a generalized dyno will put down around 230 to 240 with the drivetrain loss of the transmission.
Right.
You're getting a solid 300, 315 at 14 pounds of boost, almost less boost than what you were doing factory.
Right.
How does the car feel, and how does it compare to some of your friends that you hang out with in the car scene?
Yeah, so that's another great question. So the car feels amazing. I mean, you can tell that this turbo, Chris knew what he was doing with his previous experience of big turbo builds. And he knew what to look for on the R. I mean, the Rs, we all know, have immense amounts of torque, but 4,500 RPM, they fall off.
Starts to taper off.
They taper off. So the first thing I noticed with this car on a 4T4 turbo was that anything above 5,000 RPM, that thing still pulled.
Yeah.
It was going. And I can shift, and another 5,000 RPM climbing, it's still pulling. This car, and riding in some big turbo builds for these cars, you know, there's such a thing as boost lag. And some of these cars running, you know, only have an optimal range of 3,000 RPM, maybe. This car will run from 2,500 RPM all the way to redline pulling, and you can shift and it'll pull. So you can tell that this turbo was designed on the Autobahn, it feels like.
Yeah,
you know, it's just a long straight road. You can just give it everything.
Yeah. And
I do it. I mean, the amount of times that I am up high RPM in this car and not afraid to do so, it's just been wonderful.
Yeah. All right. So now everybody's aware that, you know, the 4T4 is cool. It's great. I mean, we're obviously proud of it, right? We basically made a turbo from scratch to bolt onto these cars. And work with the supporting pieces. You know, the turbo, to kind of explain why it does spool up quick, is it's a dual ball bearing, you know, ballistic center cartridge. We use a Garrett style CHRA, a GTX style CHRA with billet wheels. So the thing actually does spool up really quick.
There's no compromise in any quality there.
Yeah, no, and I think it's great. And that's why it is as expensive as it is because we're using a stainless steel exhaust housing, billet pieces. It's a direct bolt on, but it is there to serve your 2.5 liter. If you do have the means to go to a 2.4 and upgrade the engine, that's great. It will work with those engines. They got a little bit thicker cylinder walls there, or sleeves, so that way, you know, you don't have to worry so much if you want to go a little bit above and beyond, you know, the factory 14 or 15 PSI that we do run, even with our upgraded tune for these things. But the main thing is, you know, that you can have a heavy all-wheel drive car, and they're not really made for drag racing, right? They're made, these are road warriors. These are cars that you go out there and you do a big third gear pull, fourth gear pull. And it's a lot of fun to have that kind of power over what you're used to from stock. And then also be able to still compete with some of the cars that are out there. You've been in the car scene, you know, I mean, just what are some things that you've noticed? I know you've got a lot of friends driving different things. People that have driven your car that got fast cars. What's their reaction? What do they kind of think about your vehicle?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll start off with, you know, there's always a bigger fish in the pond. There's always someone that's going to have more horsepower than you. And I quickly came to terms with that, dealing with a hybrid and all. And, you know, I have buddies running way larger turbos than these cars ever need, but you know, they're freaking fast and they love it. I have buddies driving brand new Supras. I have buddies driving pro-charged Camaros out there. And while this car is not, you know, up to date with those, it's close. I mean, this car puts the power down, especially like Chris was mentioning, in third and fourth gear. You know, I'm a little hesitant in first gear. The all-wheel drive systems, as we all know, kind of
A little susceptible.
Yeah. But you know, second, third, fourth, anything, you know, catch me on a highway and I will do a roll with you. It puts down.
So a lot of people have been following me in my career and also owning the V70R, and its progression. But, you know, I've kept this one pretty mild compared to what Caiden's doing. Aside from the 4T4 Turbo and the turbo upgrade and the 2.4 liter engine swap, my next big swap is going to be probably doing a manual swap onto this thing. Even though we have owned R models and manuals in the past, I do enjoy it. I do believe it's a little bit more fun to drive, more spirited. This is an automatic. It's great. It's fun for an old guy like me, but I'll probably finish it off with a manual transmission someday. But again, I've left things pretty much alone. You know, it's got lowering coils, sway bars, all the bits. But it's awesome to see a young person, a young adult like Caiden, you know, taking it to another level with aesthetics. You know, he's done airbags on the car. He's got wheels that nobody else out there has. I'm running pegs, 19-inch pegs. But Caiden has a lot of really cool things that's unique. And I just love seeing that. And so I thought it was worthy to talk about his car, the progression of it. Our marketing department is doing a fantastic job right now with highlighting some of our employees' cars. Caiden is one that's coming out here pretty quick. It might be up before this video even shows up. So it goes around the car, talking more in detail around the things that Caiden did to the vehicle, which I think everybody's going to love to see. But, you know, it's one of those eye-openers for me, you know. Being a young kid, started off working here, and now I'm the old guy behind the scenes doing things, keeping the business going. Now I rely on the youngins here to make sure and stay in front of the customers and let them know what's possible and what we've done. And it's been a privilege to kind of see you grow and learn and come talk to me, and obviously take that and work on your own car. That's one thing I've always appreciated about you and watching you progress over time, is that you've always worked on your car. You know, I'd watch you go home with parts, and the next day you'd come back and talk to me all the things you ran into and what you learned about. And so it's great to see. So, and like anything, you know, I've been involved in R&D here at IPD for many years, and you know, I've had to deal with it with Caiden and other people that have worked here that are really enthusiastic. You know, IPD does its best to go ahead and pick certain products that we can go after and manufacture and design for the masses. Again, you know, it's a business. I would love to fabricate all day and do one-offs. There's people out there that do that, and I think it's fantastic. We try to create products that will make the car perform to a level that they can rely on, and that, you know, is just ready to go. And sometimes that doesn't suit everybody that wants to go a little bit further, you know, but we do listen, we see what's going on. Yeah. And we do appreciate everybody that's out there, especially my staff that's working direct with you guys. But I'm telling you, we are here to manufacture parts that do work for your car, that will work and, you know, be worth the investment. So
absolutely. And, you know, before we leave, I just want to say thank you to all you guys out there for being there. And, you know, I wouldn't be where I'm at without any of you guys, and certainly IPD wouldn't. And I know that our IPD product just might not be for everyone, and that's okay. But, you know, everyone just needs to know that you are always welcome to call in and call and chat with me or Chris. We are here for any maintenance parts that your car might need, any IPD exclusive parts you guys might need, or just someone to talk to about your car. You know, we're humans over here. So, yep.
Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching, guys.